Hello, Sophie here with a new grease pencil tutorial. So here's the project that we'll be making together. I think of it as a lights out, day to night animation that goes from a regular dog painting to something a bit more magical. I've split it into 3 parts, and so here is a quick overview of what each video will cover. Part 1 is animating a background paper texture using Blender. Part 2 will be a demo of how I paint with grease pencil. And part 3, animating and finalizing. I'll be animating grease pencil strokes using different modifiers. So I have some resources included to go along with this tutorial. You can access these either via a free Gumroad listing or a public Patreon post, both of which will be linked below. If you'd like a more in-depth look at my process, the bonus content for this tutorial includes my final blend file of my finished artwork. There is also a real-time version of this tutorial, so all of that is available as a paid Gumroad listing and can also be accessed by becoming a patron. If you do choose the Patreon route, you will also have instant access to a load of other really cool content. I have been having so much fun lately creating cool things for my patrons, and I would love it if you checked it out. Alright, hi, let's dive in. So I thought it would be fun to use this paper texture today. It's a free-to-use image from Pixabay, and I cropped it into a square. And so I'll have the original version linked below, as well as my cropped version. So in Blender, I've opened up a new 2D animation workspace. And so I'll start by going into the compositing workspace, and I will check on the box for use nodes. We can click and drag to create some space between these two. And then with Shift A, I can search and type in image to add an image node. Into here, I'll insert my paper texture. Fun fact, I've had to refilm this tutorial, and the first time I filmed it, I forgot to insert my paper texture. Much confusion ensued. Next up, Shift A again to search for a scale node, and I will plug the image output of the image node into the scale node like this. And so for the scale node, I like to change the relative here to the render size, and I keep the setting on stretch. This is just the setting that I always like working with, so that like whatever dimensions paper texture I have, they're gonna modify themselves to match the dimensions of our canvas. But in this case, I do have a square image, and so what I'll do is I'll go into the output properties, and I'll change the dimensions of our canvas so that we have a square canvas to work with, so that it matches our background paper texture. Okay, 1920. So next up, I want to make sure that any art that I make with grease pencil will show up on top of our paper texture background. So once again, Shift A, and I'll search for alpha. And it's the alpha over node that I want to use for this. So for this, I want to plug the render layers node, the image, into the bottom image slot of the alpha over node. And then the scale node will plug that image into the top image slot. And then I want to plug the alpha over node into the composite node. And if I test render, what do I see? Still doesn't work. I thought I figured it out from the first time I recorded this. Turns out I did not. All right. The setting I forgot that I keep forgetting is in the render properties tab here. In the film dropdown, I want to check on the box for transparent. So now, woohoo. Okay, so I'll close the new render window, and then I will, here in this corner, drag to the left to open up a new window. I will change this workspace to the image editor, and I will have it be the render result. So that, because I'm going to be modifying the nodes now, and I want to see in real time the effect that that's going to have on the paper texture. So I want to create some space between the alpha over node and the scale node, because now I will Shift A, and in color I want to add an RGB curves node, which I can just plop in between these two nodes. So to give you an idea of what I'm going for, So this whole tutorial is inspired by this piece that I made last year with the same kind of day to night animation. I'm definitely going a lot simpler in terms of like the art for this piece, because the purpose of this tutorial is more to show you exactly how something like this is done. So I'll just modify the curves to get a dark blue that I like. I don't have much advice on how to do this other than just like complete trial and error. I only sort of understand how curves work from, again, trial and error and trying things out. Thank you, Past Sophie, for explaining that. I only wish your microphone had been plugged in. I did just copy and paste this node for the second time around, and that did make me realize, like, I'm kind of scrolling through the different curves that exist within this node. I don't exactly know how to share the exact settings, and so in order to share this node with you, like, I do recommend you try out modifying the curves for yourself, but if you happen to want like exactly the same results for this node, I will include like a blend file from which you can copy and paste, or like copy this node and paste it into your own, because that's how I did it for me, and it worked pretty well. But yeah, one cool thing to note about this method, since it's all done within Blender curves, basically all I'm trying to do at this point is to get it like a good enough starting point to start working on the night portion for when I'll be ready for that. But really for the final version, I can very much come back to these nodes and continue to modify the curves. Once I have drawn my artwork, then I'll have a better sense of how I want this background color to look. So my plans for the animation, and this too, like the timing and the exact keyframes and stuff, can totally be modified later. Spoiler alert, they are modified later. But for now, my initial thought was to have the animation go from frame 80 all the way to frame 140. So that is the transition from day to night, to have that transition be over 60 frames. And so here at frame 140, what I want to do, this is with the RGB curves node, I can right click over the FAC value and insert the keyframe there. Exciting. And now back at frame 80, what I want to do is I want to lower this value to 0. Auto keying is turned on down here by default in a new 2D animation starter file. So that created a new keyframe. And so I'm scrubbing along the timeline. I do need to release to see the difference. Already, I think it's looking really good. All right, so let's go back into the 2D animation workspace. And as we can see, the paper texture background shows up when we render our image, but it's not currently showing up within the scene where we're actually drawing with grease pencil. So I don't like that. I want to draw on top of paper texture backgrounds when I'm working with grease pencil. So the way that I personally like to set this up is in the World Properties tab here. The color here, I can press on this dot to change the color to an image texture. That's okay. We haven't inserted any image yet. So we can insert an image like this, or we could also insert a video. You see where I'm going with this? That's right, we're going back to the compositing workspace, and we are actually going to be rendering this animation. So for the actual final piece, the final animation, I will be rendering using this node setup to see the paper texture background, meaning that once I do that, the paper texture will be at the highest possible quality. And so what I'm looking for at this point is to render it at like medium quality so that I can insert it into my drawing workspace, and it's good enough to draw on top of for now. So for this, I want to go to the output properties. I will change the resolution percentage to 50%. Also, in the interest of rendering it more quickly, I want to change the frame start to frame 80, and I want to end the animation at frame 140, and I will change the output folder to one that I create just for this video. And for the file format, I do personally like using FFmpeg video, and change the container to MP4 in the encoding dropdown. Everything else looks good. I'm not going to modify any of the other settings. And so for this part, I basically just want the background paper texture, And so I will select the RGB curves node and bypass the alpha over node straight to the composite node. So all that we get is the paper texture. And then it's just Control F12 to render the animation. So now, back in the 2D animation workspace, in the World Properties tab, I will open and select the video. So what I like to do next is in this vector here, I want to change that to window. So what's funny about this setting is, so it basically fills your entire camera view, your canvas, but when you're not in render view mode, then it fills the entire scene. It's definitely an interesting setting. It works really well for me. You know, I basically just work while looking at my scene from the camera window. You can access that with this button here, or also numpad 0. And also notice how it stretches to fill the whole window. Like I talked about, the node, having the scale node be set to stretch. So as you're noticing, the image is currently tiling around our camera view window. And so I either stick with this setting depending on what the paper texture looks like, or in this drop down here, sometimes I also change it to extend, which is an interesting view, definitely. But I find this a bit less distracting currently and just easier to look at, easier to work with. So now a few last settings to fix, to change, so that we can see the animation. So we want to check on the box for auto refresh. That is the first thing. We want to change the frame count to 60 because remember our animation goes over 60 frames. That's still not exactly what we want. And so if I change the start frame to frame 80, now the animation of the paper texture perfectly matches how I want it to, and it updates live as I scroll along the timeline. I can't get over how cool that is. So now back in the compositing workspace, I'll return the animation length back to what it was before, frame 1 to frame 250. And then the last thing I did was I plugged the alpha over node back into the compositing node, so that, I mean, I don't really need to render as I'm working, but if I do want to render to get a different view of my piece, it shows up how I want it to, the grease pencil strokes on top of the paper texture background. Lovely. Alright, so this concludes part 1 of this tutorial. Thank you so much for checking out this video and for following along. I hope that it was helpful. If you're watching this when it goes up, then part 2 will be up next week. And if you're watching this from the future, then you can find the next video in the series right here. Please consider also liking the video and subscribing for more grease pencil and art content. And you can find me all over the internet at Sophie Jantak. I will see you again very soon. Take care. Bye.